Well, good morning. Oh, apparently I moved ahead already, so that's the family. Beautiful little Irish family. You heard that I am actually British and I'm Irish, and I've lived in the States for a long time now. My box is I'm an Irish American born and raised in England. But I have a gift for the first person in the audience that can tell me the translation of the great Irish words, Erin go bra. Come on, you've all got your PCs open. Erin go bra. The gift is a brand new shiny copy of Microsoft Office Professional 2010. That's really close. Does anyone want to give a, okay, you? Ireland Forever. That was too classic a translation out of Google. Congratulations. All right, Microsoft Office 2010. So I'm delighted to be here. Congratulations to you. First, I'd love to start by commending you all on your education. The decision you made to enter the school to get your degrees or your master's degrees is probably one of the most important decisions you ever made in your life, and I absolutely commend you for it. It is without any question the most important thing you can do, and I urge you to complete your qualifications and graduate as soon as you can and get out into the real world because we need you. There is a skills gap. There's a massive skills gap, and the skills that you're learning in the schools today are really important and needed in business. So commend you for what you're doing. I'm lucky enough to have been given great opportunities to pursue my education from my computer science degree back in the days through my MBA, which I did in later stages of my career in order to get education that I had missed out on in earlier parts of my career that I felt that I needed. One of the most important things I've been able to pursue, though, is around industry credentialing. Industry certifications, I think, are quite important. And whether you're, whatever role you have in a business, including as a CEO, one of the most important skills you can have is the skills to use technology today. And I'm proud to show off some of my Microsoft Office PowerPoint skills through my certifications that I have in Microsoft Office, which, by the way, are still very important skills. And I'm going to come back to that in a few moments. I've had a lot of fun in my career, and I've had a chance to work in many countries, many industries, and certainly many businesses. And during the last 10 years particularly, I've been exposed to a lot of mergers and acquisition activity in either buying companies or selling my company that I was with here, or being part of and helping to sell companies and buy companies in the past. And during that time, I've learned some valuable lessons. And when Brad asked me to come and speak to you today, I thought, well, you know, these guys get a chance to hear from some of the greatest business leaders in Utah, and they're asking me to come in and talk to them. What haven't they heard before? And I really felt that one of the things that I could bring some value on is some of the lessons that I've learned in developing my leadership skills and building a company, creating value, and then maximizing the return on investment in that value. So let me start off by finding out a little bit about the audience today. Please raise your hand if you're in the business school, please. That's great. That's because it's mandatory for you guys, right? So please raise your hand if you're in the school, but in another department, not the business school. There's quite a few of you too. Excellent. Anybody here off the street? No? No, okay. I heard they was open to anybody. That was great. And faculty. Any faculty here or administration? All right. And see, you notice the administration guys are all on the front, and the business school guys are all on the back. So anyway, I'm really pleased to get a chance to spend time with you today. As I was thinking through my lessons for today, I realized that it was all business. So I thought, well, okay, this is a great opportunity to tell a little bit about my background. And I went to this awesome school in England where you can see, it's called Northampton Grammar School, where we had to play rugby and cricket. It's interesting when you have to play sports. In the winter you play rugby, and in the summer you play cricket. You rebel against that, and you end up playing soccer, which became my love and my passion throughout my life, but not a sport that we played in school. However, I learned at a very early stage in my life that I like business. And when I sort of think back at some of the momentous occasions, back here in, I think this is 1975, when that was the longest and the curliest my hair ever was, I had the opportunity to start my first business with my best friend called Pete Chow, and we called our business Chelly Enterprises. And it was my love for business. I won't explain all of the wonderful things we did. Some of them would probably be seen as illegal in the US, but it wasn't drugs. It was all good stuff. And we actually really did some fantastic ventures, and I realized that I loved business. And so I got a desire for that when I went into my computer science classes. I really enjoyed computer programming, but it was really, what really attracted me was the opportunity to apply the technical skills I learned into business, and that's really where my career has gone ever since. So what I've done in this presentation is I'm sharing some lessons that I've learned, particularly in the area of creating value and maximizing return on investment. But on the way, I'm going to share with you a few tips. Now, it's funny enough, I was telling somebody I was going to share some tips, and this gentleman said to me, make sure you tell everyone that what TIP stands for. Does anyone actually know it is an acronym? Hey, Google guy, how's he doing back there? TIP actually originally stood for to ensure promptness. That's why somebody got tip, and you paid your tip in advance. But my wife told me that I need to really emphasize that what I'm going to talk about is to ensure profitability, because I think a lot of the tips I'm giving you are around building a business. The first one is know yourself. One of the most important things that you can do throughout your career is understand your strengths and your weaknesses and your motivators. Your strengths and your weakness and your motivators will dictate where you can apply the most value and what you end up doing in life that makes the biggest difference. And it's hard for many of us to understand those strengths and weaknesses and motivators until you've been doing it for some time. And it took me quite a long time in my career to understand that there's three types of leaders, particularly three types of CEOs, and I'm not good at two of them. Just simply, that's not my expertise and not my motivators. I'm particularly motivated by one aspect of running companies. So let me talk about those three. The first type of CEO, or first type of leader, is a startup, somebody who is creative. Raise your hand here if you think you have an idea that you'd like to start a business. So a few of you got ideas. That's really hard. It's really hard. The creative part of starting a business is one of the most difficult things to come up with, is, you know, like, what's that unique thing that I can do differently and that I can be successful with? Once you've got that idea, you've got to get financing, you've got to make sure that you've got the talent around you to be successful, you've got to build your business plan, you've got to do all the things that you're learning in business school, and then you have to run with it, and you have to keep running with it, and you have to run it lean and mean, because that's how businesses start. There reaches a point in your time as a startup owner, creator of a business, when you really need to bring in talent around you. And that talent, probably more process-oriented, people that can take this idea and this concept and really take it to the next level. And those are growth-oriented CEOs. And the growth-oriented CEO puts more process in place, systems in place, maybe some infrastructure, helps to bring in talent, helps you not make all the decisions in the business. Very few people make that transition from being that entrepreneur, startup genius, to being a growth-oriented CEO. The third stage of the business, when now you've got to have tons of compliance and practical systems in place. And what you need now is a consolidator, somebody that really is capable of taking the systems and structure that you've built and running with it on a consistent basis and provide more visibility to the business. You certainly need somebody at that level in a public company where compliance is really critical. Those three types of CEOs There aren't many that have transitioned from being a startup genius to being a consolidator. And there are some very famous cases. In fact, actually, it's probably, anyone here heard of Josh James? Local guy? Very successful business guy. Yeah, he's done really well. I would put him in the category of somebody who can take a business and build it and then consolidate it. There aren't that many. Bill Gates was another one. So there are some famous examples. I am not that person who can create that idea. Never been able to. I've thought, well, what can I do? Let me go start a business. But the fact that some of you people out here in the audience have got some good ideas, run with them because you've got innovation. I like to grow things. I like to take something that's already born and take it to the next level. And that's the box that I live in, and I really enjoy it. I get excited by it. I'm able to take people's ideas and help grow and develop their business. And then I get very frustrated by the bureaucracies that you have to have in place to be a consolidator, and it's time for me to move on. And that's probably one of the first lessons or tips I can pass on to you today, is try to understand who you are and what your strengths and weaknesses are, and most importantly, what your motivators are, because it'll lead you to make better decisions along the line. And so I frame that, and the reason I started with my first tip is because that sort of led me through my career to making decisions to move businesses, to change industries, to go from the technology industry to the education industry where we were leveraging technology in our businesses. And more recently, to doing something totally different, which is a totally mission-based organization helping kids that have dropped out of high school. And I'll cover that in a while. So with that said, let me tell you some of the more practical lessons that I've learned along the lines about building business, building value. And I'd like to start with an example. The example here is Certiport. Some of you here will know Certiport. It's a company that I'm actually proud to have an association with UVU as an employer. As the CEO of Certiport, we had a lot of interns that worked that were studying at UVU, and we hired a lot of people at UVU. During my time, we hired over 100 people. A lot of them came out of the school here for many reasons, not least of which there's really good talent coming out of UVU that led me to my role today on the foundation board. I'm really proud of the work that the university is doing, and I think you've really got great plans for growth. So I had the opportunity to join this company, Certiport, that's based in American Fork, when we made one of our great decisions in our my career and my wife's and my family life, to move to Utah. Moving to Utah in 2009 for me to run this company, Certiport, was a big change. And it was a wonderful lifestyle change for our family, and I'm really glad that we did it. In fact, to the point where after selling Certiport and moving on, we're really pleased to get the opportunity to stay here, because this is one of the first cities we've lived in that we said, hey, we want to stay here now. We've usually said, what's next? So Certiport is, I won't spend a lot of time talking about the company, but it's a global education technology company. It's now working in over 100 countries. This company pioneered this area of live in the application testing, which is, so if you're using Microsoft Excel as an example, and you take an Excel test, you're actually doing it on a test engine developed by the team at Certiport. It's a company that was private equity owned when I got there in 2009. Headquarters here in Utah Valley, and all the great things about Utah Valley were benefits to the company. And it's a company that we had it was an incredibly complex organization with people in every aspect of the business, from finance and accounting through technology and sales. So that's the Certiport story. When I got to the company, though, there were some challenges that I saw. The challenges were that growth had been stagnant. The company had tremendous potential and opportunities, but it hadn't really demonstrated growth around the world. One of the reasons for that is that they had a fantastic global distribution channel with great partners throughout Asia and Africa, the Middle East and Latin America. But these partners were just not inspired by the growth in the organization, and they really wanted to see change. Management was complacent. There was a lot of talented people there, but they were, it was okay. What was happening was okay, and that's one of the things you hear about the frog in the pot of boiling water story, is that when I arrived, I felt like a frog diving into this pot of boiling water. Things had to change. But a lot of the management were already in that pot of boiling water, and they probably hadn't realized that there was complacency that was set in. And we had a very limited product portfolio. We did Microsoft Office certifications really well. And one of the larger issues was that it was really difficult to forecast our business. And one of the things you'll hear me talk about later is the importance of creating revenue visibility and profitability visibility in the organization. So these were big challenges that needed to be solved. And that's the growth story. So some of the key things that we were able to spend time on is the first thing a business leader needs to do is surround himself or herself with really great talent. And the talent that was in the organization was fantastic. In some cases, great people in the wrong jobs. That's one of the hardest things managers have to find, is the people that are simply doing a good job, that like what they do, but possibly could be in a different role and be more beneficial for themselves and for the company. And I was successful in being able to move some of the people into new roles that it was game-changing for our company and for them. Bringing in your own talent as a leader is really important. You have to understand the weaknesses and bring that talent in. And there's a word used by organization behavior therapists or organization behavior experts called top grading. And top grading is the concept of taking your organization in and improving the quality of it. Maybe taking the bottom part of the organization out and bringing in new people that add value to it. And during the time that I was there, we had some significant top grading focus. Product portfolio, looking at the product portfolio and expanding the product portfolio, getting in new products and working with companies that had products that we really felt we could develop certification programs for was important. Expanding that global distribution network and inspiring it through many different things. And most importantly, implementing more structured processes and systems and infrastructure to create scalability were things that we had to focus on as a business. One of the things I talked about earlier was a lack of revenue visibility. So by implementing a more innovative licensing program where instead of selling products one at a time to consumers or to individuals, now selling a license to a school or to a country, in fact, was a way to actually create more visibility into revenue and projections for the business. And then looking at what we did well and looking at what competitors did well, we were able to pursue niche acquisitions and actually acquire a company that was a leading competitor in a space in our industry that really added a lot of value. So those were some of the key things that we needed to focus on. And you'll see me later talk about some of the key things that business leaders need to do around establishing value, and I'll come back to some of those. The results were fantastic. We grew the organization significantly. Partners all over the world wanted to get in on the business. The partners became inspired. We expanded into a number of new countries. New organizations like Hewlett-Packard now wanted us to produce the certification programs for them, and we had significant revenue growth in the business. This resulted in a lot of attention from the media and from companies in our industry. The education industry started to pay attention. I started getting calls, an average of about 3 a week from private equity companies or financial companies saying, hey, we'd like to know more about you. We're interested in potentially acquiring your company at the right time. One of the things that we were quite pleased about is Utah Valley 50. This is actually, I have to correct something that Joel said. We were actually the 9th largest company in Utah Valley, not Utah. I wish it would have been Utah, but it was still pretty significant for us. And going through some strong growth and getting a lot of media attention. As a result, in May of 2012, after having all of this attention from a lot of different organizations, we sold our organization to Pearson, a billion-dollar company out of the UK. That's the largest education company in the world, provides really strong synergies with our organization. The rationale for the business was that our strong revenue growth, our strong financials, our strong systems in place, and our business model, the excellent relationships we had with the technology vendors like Microsoft and HP and others at Adobe, the very strong management team and the employee base that we had in the company were important. consistent deliverable growth with more forecasting, very strong presence in the academic markets. In fact, UVU was a client of Certiport's in the certification side, and a very strong global presence with Certiport now operating in over 150 countries. As a result, public information was disclosed on this, that the company was sold for $140 million in a cash transaction with no earn-out, and an earn-out is important to business owners, which meant that there was no, or people like myself didn't have to stay. We wanted to stay. And the return on investment for the private equity company was quite enormous. It was the most successful transaction that they have accomplished as a private equity company in a long period of time. So that's the Certiport growth story and some of the things that happened there. Now that takes me on to my second tip. And I was actually talking about some of the other people that you've had here, and James Clark is a great local money guy. Actually, the presentation here, and I think his presentation was coined as fail fast. And actually something he said to me when we actually met, that's really important for a business leader to be able to fail fast. And what I say to anybody nowadays that I hire is I want you to come on board and make as many mistakes as you can as quickly as possible. Now that usually surprises them. And it's not that I'm looking for them to actually make mistakes, is I'm looking for them to make decisions and do things. Because a lot of people get very sensitive to, being too careful. And one of the lessons that I've learned over the years, actually, I learned this from one of the greatest business leaders of all time called Sam Walton in our time in Bentonville. When Sam Walton said that failing fast was probably the key to his success. Because by the time, and his is his words to me, by the time that I had made the mistake, realized I'd made the mistake, fixed it, put a solution in, the competitor, target, hadn't even realized they had a problem. That was really inspiring to me, and I realized that was absolutely true. And if you're willing to take experiments and move quickly and make decisions and do things, and but learn your lesson, take appropriate risks, but learn your lesson when you realize that you've made a mistake and fix it, own up to it. If you're an individual in the organization, that's the most important thing you can do, and then you will actually make great progress. And I think the lesson that all of you should take away from today is that it's okay to be experimental. It's okay to take appropriate risks, but it's really important, if you see it failing or you failed, is to own up to it and let the people that need to know. They will be okay with that. They won't be okay with you not telling them. That's going to be a risky proposition for you. Okay, so that's second tip. So now I'd like to sort of move into some of the lessons that I've learned in creating value and maximizing return on investment from the business standpoint. So there's 8 tips here. First of all, it's really important to run your company as if you're never going to sell. One of the questions that people always ask is, what's your exit strategy? Well, you have to have an exit strategy, by the way, but it's really important that you actually focus on running your business as if there's never going to be one, that you continue to run your business. I know, actually, many of the speakers that have presented over the last year, I've had the chance to get to meet, and one of them, I asked that question, well, you've done amazing things for such a young guy. What's your exit strategy? I don't have one. I love what I do. I want to keep doing it, and I've got no plans to sell my companies. And you're always learning. And in my case, I was actually inspired by his desire to continue to run his company as if he's never going to sell and continue to build his business and build his legacy. So some of the things that I think an organization needs to do, investing in long-term value, developing your management talent. I can't say it enough. The most important thing that a leader, a particular CEO can do is surround themselves with really good people and develop and invest in that management talent. Making sure that this is particularly for your second and third stage CEOs, if you go back to my tip from earlier, is establishing process and systems and making sure you're running the company appropriately with the right level of compliance. making sure that you establish brands. It's really easy to look at your company and continue to doing the same things that you do all the time. When I arrived at my new company, actually, just at the beginning of this year, I saw tremendous brand confusion. There was multiple names for the company. There was multiple messages used by the company in presenting the services that we offered, but there was no cohesiveness in our brand. And so what do? You look for expertise in the industry or the company that can help you. Did anyone here attend a presentation by Lance Black earlier this year? Anyone here for Cowboy Guy, the hat? No? Okay, new group today. Lance is a genius, and his organization's a genius when it comes to branding. We contracted with Eli Kirk, Lance's company, to go through a branding strategy where we interviewed our customers, our prospective customers, our students that we work with, employees, and many other stakeholders. And over an extensive period of time, we evaluated who we are, what we did, what our company was all about, and the messaging that we needed to articulate around our company. And we ended up changing our entire brand. And our brand includes the company name, it includes a logo, it includes the messaging, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Developing the infrastructure in the business, make sure that you've got the appropriate level of diversification of your product line and your customers. It's a really scary place to be to have a high concentration of your revenue in one particular thing. That thing might be a product line, it might be a customer. You've heard many stories of people that had 60, 70, 80% of their business with one company, and that company might change its direction, and then you've got to move quickly to stay alive. Continuing to improve customer service is an area you might think you're really good at it, but you've always got to continue to improve. And intellectual property, which I'll cover again in a while. Sorry, and the last thing there was building a sustainable company culture. Cultures either happen or they can develop or you can grow them. And I think one of the skills that you need to have as a leader is to understand what your culture is in a company and understand where it needs to be and make the steps necessary to take the culture from A to B. And that's really quite an important lesson to learn. I'll cover the strategic framework in a while. I'll cover it again. I can't say enough. You have to surround yourself with incredible talent. The people in your organization are the reason that you're successful, not because of any other asset you have in a business. And the old saying that just hire great people and get out of their way is probably the most important thing that I can say. Because that's one of the skills that I've developed over the years, is understanding what it takes to be great in your company, and then make sure you hire and develop those people to be great, and just simply get out of their way, let them be successful, and importantly, hold them accountable, and hold them accountable for what their objectives are in helping you grow that business. Related to that is a leader. One of the most important things you can do is to set bold yet achievable goals. This is related to anything you do in life, actually. I have this mantra, and one of the things in my mantra has always been, never give up when you know you're right. It's persistence that I've had throughout my career. I'll take you back for a second to a story from my days in Bentonville. So my wife and I were happily living in another part of the world when I saw this fantastic opportunity with the world's largest retailer in the early 90s called Walmart. And so I was able to convince lovely Tricia here that to move our family to Bentonville, Arkansas, of all places, because this was really important, that they needed to be doing something that I could help them with. Now that's quite a tough, that's a fantastic wife, by the way. An incredibly supportive wife. That should have been tip one, by the way. And surround yourself with a fantastic family who are really supportive, if you're going to be that guy. And so I've got a long story about my time there, but I'll just abbreviate it down to one particular story. There was, at the time that I knew that this company could change and revolutionize the way that retail industry worked and the way that inventory management worked in the retail business, I had a story so compelling that I realized that I needed to articulate this to the most senior person I could get to, and at the time that was the CIO. The CIO was several steps above who I could speak to at my level, but now I'd established enough of a relationship at this giant company to at least be able to get into the offices through a badge, and the receptionist in the office said, hey, this guy gets to the office at 6 o'clock in the morning. And yeah, you might want to consider just trying to come in and grab some time with him. So I thought, okay, I got to do something. He was not returning my calls. So I got to this guy's office at 5 to 6. I'm an English guy. You know, I'm not very good at 5 to 6 in the morning. It's usually, we started work in 9 o'clock something when I grew up in England. And this was tough. Would it be tough for all of you guys too? Yeah, oh yeah. So now I'm outside his office. He shows up, didn't even look at me, walked straight into his office. He came in and out of his office during the day, didn't look at me at all. I stayed there. Well, that was really before the days of smartphones that were any good. So I had a notebook similar to the one I'm carrying here, and I'd make notes, and every time I saw him, I would pay attention and try to look smart and ready to speak to him. And the whole day went by and nothing, and he went home. Next day, and the next day. It was finally late on Thursday. It's about 5:30, which is about the time he was leaving, that he came out, and his exact words to me were, "You still here, boy?" This was Arkansas now. He was from Little Rock. "You still here, boy?" And I said, "Yes, Mr. X." I won't say his name. Well, I will. It was actually, his name was Bobby Martin. So I said, "Yes, Mr. Martin, I've got something so compelling that I really believe that this will change your career and the whole strategy of Walmart." And he just laughed at me, just literally broke down. He said, "You've had a week to prepare that line?" He said, "Come on in, boy." And then, so I came in, I started chatting for about 20 seconds, and then he stopped me again. He says, "Where are you from, boy?" And I'm getting a little offended, but I'm not showing it because clearly he's testing me. And I said, "Well, I'm from London, England. Where are you from, Mr. Martin?" He says, "Well, I'm from Little Rock, London, England." "Well, it could have been worse. You could have been a damn Yankee. You know what a damn Yankee is, don't you, boy?" I said, "Is that somebody from the north?" He said, "Somebody from the north who won't go home." He says, "You'll do." It's just like that. And so that was when I got in with Mr. Martin. And then we spent 2.5 hours. He loved the story. We embarked on an experiment, and literally it revolutionized the retail world. But I'm not here to tell that story today. And it was a really cool one. And the message there is set bold goals, but never give up when you know you're right. And that's one of the things that I've really followed throughout my career. I won't talk about that because of time, but all right, so that's some of the things that you do related to continuing to run your business as if you're never going to sell it. The second thing you do, whether you're an owner or a manager or a startup or whatever stage you are, or even if you're that guy who says, "No, I never want to sell my company," is always be ready to sell. Because there's always a number out there, or there's always somebody that really wants your business for whatever reason. And there are some really important things that you can focus on. Govern the company as if it were a public company. It's just good sense. When you come to sell a company, if you haven't complied to the right financial controls, many of you here in the business school, pay attention in your accounting classes, pay attention in your finance classes, because that gap stuff is really important. You really need to run the company, complete the legal, operational, technical audits, the IP audits on a regular basis. Make sure you're running the company with the right level of compliance in mind. If you don't, at the time of your sale, apart from anything else, some part of that could be illegal, but at the time of the sale, you're going to find yourself in a situation that there are going to be changes on settlement differences from the value that you thought you were going to get versus the value that you're going to receive. Make sure that you're running a company with the right people in the right positions. And very importantly, in a business, know your competitors, because there are a lot of people that might want to buy your business, and a lot of them are strategic companies, as they're called, and people that you might be competing with today. So they may be your buyers. So what do they value about your business? Visit them. And last key tip is ensure that you learn how to apply limited resources, because whether you're preparing your company for sale or just running it because you love it, it's really important that you balance the three things that you get to balance in an organization. There's only a fixed amount of time, there's a fixed amount of dollars available, and there's only a fixed amount of investment capital and people to actually execute against your plans. And it's to balance those things is actually quite vital. If you change any of those, it'll add dollars to your cost. So one of the important decisions that you need to make on every time you have to make a decision, particularly when there's an investment or a project involved, is learn how to invest smartly. Get really good at identifying and prioritizing the opportunities. The third key lesson is developing and protecting your intangibles, and those are your proprietary assets. Intellectual property, trade secrets, market knowledge, market positions, brand, as I talked about, and customer satisfaction. You hear about these things in class, but and you're learning how to do that. Pay attention in your law classes, because it's really quite important to understand what that means and how to actually protect your IP assets. Because if you don't, you could lose the value in your company, and you might actually, and you can benefit significantly on the sale if you've got good IP. Again, I've said it many times, management is absolutely critical. During the sale process, you will see the importance of your management, particularly. The entire organization has helped you get to the point of building value. But at the time of a sale, middle management particularly, and often upper management, is retained by companies, particularly in the financial markets, because they have bought into the management team and the management philosophy. So ensuring that your management is invested in the company, and probably vested in the company through some type of equity, is something that I always encourage fellow business leaders to do. And a lot of startup leaders don't like to do that for some reason. And I really think that's a very important thing that you need to do, is your management help you get there. Make sure that they actually see the value in any transaction as well. Next point, tactics are important, but getting the timing right is really, really critical. You have to get an alignment with your shareholders if you have them. There's a lot of internal factors from your planning and profitability through to the external factors such as what's going on in the markets. And getting the balance between these three is really quite critical when it comes to actually a sale. This is an interesting chart. It's actually one that I got from one of my partners. Shows the enterprise value of organizations, or the sale value, as a multiple of EBITDA from the period 1990 to 2013 for technology companies in the middle market. And you can see that you can get a multiple of 10x, or you can get a multiple of 7x on average, just depending on what the time is. When you go to sell your company, technology companies are often bought on a multiple of revenue, but most companies, particularly in the financial markets, buy an organization based on a multiple of their profit, or EBITDA. And so this is quite interesting. All right. Next lesson is whatever your role in a company, but particularly for the leader, is know your financial story. Whatever you do, don't leave it to your CFO. A lot of CEOs actually, they've come from an operational background, maybe a legal background, some from finance background, which is useful in this case. But if you've grown up as a sales and marketing guy, which I did, you're gonna not know enough about your financial story of your business unless you become very knowledgeable and acquainted with that. That's actually the single reason I did my MBA, is I really felt I didn't know enough about the financial aspect of running a business. And so I completed my MBA to do that. And that was very, very beneficial for me. And now I talk the talk. One of the most important things that you'll know in running your business is understanding your cash situation. Cash is king. And free cash flow, or cash burn when you're before profitability, is how much money is left after you've paid your taxes, your capex, and your working capital. And that is typically how somebody's going to evaluate your company. But make sure you understand all aspects of it on the revenue side, where the company makes money, by products and service, by distribution channel, what the trends are. Because if you're going to if you want to maximize return on investment, which is one of the themes I'm talking about today, is you are going to need to articulate this as the leader in the business. I'm getting to the end. Is couple of last points. Is you can't do this on your own. You have to get yourself a good advisor. Typically, that you have multiple advisors, from your tax accountants and your financial advisors to an investment banker. And an investment banker's role is quite comprehensive. And they'll help you go from the decision in the first place to closing the deal. And there are so many aspects of investment banking that I would strongly recommend that you work with. Even if in the sale you feel that you're doing a lot of the work yourself, they're guiding you through that process, and they're really orchestrating it. And when it comes down to the negotiation, they are a very critical and pivotal part in it. They're going to help you with knowledge of the marketplace, the timing of the sale. They might help you find a buyer that you don't know, and they can guide you through the multiple types of sale. There are significant types of ways you can sell your business. Find a process. I'll come back to this slide. What you're looking for is you're looking for that outlier, the company that you weren't expecting that's going to pay a higher multiple for your business because you didn't know about them in the first place. And it's hard to find that outlier without a process and without a good investment banker. And in the case of the sale of Certiport, that was we actually had multiple outliers where there were 3 or 4 companies out of hundreds that were interested that were really clearly differentiated from the pack when it came to the multiple they were willing to pay. And here I talk about the broad auction, which is the philosophy of having lots of different companies through a targeted process and negotiated process, and your investment banker can sort of help you through that process. I'll come back to a practical example. In the case of Certiport, it was in January of 2012 that the board of directors decided to sell the company. That was a decision that they made with me. The timing was right for lots of different reasons. We chose an investment banker. We made an internal announcement. We went through the process of an NDAs, initial calls with a bunch of different companies. There were literally over 100 companies that expressed interest in this business. Companies like Utah Valley organizations, particularly in the ed tech space. We then went into due diligence with a few selected investors and finally negotiated and closed. Okay. All right, and last point is trust your instincts. Throughout this process of selling an organization, you're going to see a lot, you're going to feel a lot, and ultimately you can use knowledge and facts and data, but you have to be able to trust your instincts at the end of the day. So that's a summary of the 9 lessons I learned in creating business value. I've got just a couple of minutes, so I'm just going to tell you a very quick story about what I'm doing today. I had the opportunity to join an organization that's focused on a very important space in our world today, and that is this high school dropout epidemic. Graduation rates in this country are less than 80%. In fact, 78% is the current graduation rate. Approximately 1 in 4 kids who goes to a high school in Utah does not graduate. And why is that? There's a lot of reasons. But as a result, the U.S. has fallen from the highest graduation rate in the world to 5th from the bottom. This is a challenge that isn't being seriously dealt with by our education organizations and the government. So it's impacting communities. The dropout's going to earn almost $1 million less than a college graduate during their life. The fact you've got your high school diploma and you're at college is a great thing. High school dropouts are going to be a problem to society. They're going to be a financial drain. The average high school dropout costs society about $320,000. The cause of this is many different things, but usually life got in the way. Somebody might have got sick, they got pregnant, they had to work 2 jobs to support their family, or they're homeless. There's a lot of reasons. And once they drop out of school, there's generally not an organization around to help them. There's 2 solutions. One is you stop them before they fall out of high school, or you find the kids that have dropped out, and then you bring them back into the system. The only company in this country that I'm aware of that is actually focused on helping these kids without having these kids to have to go back into brick and mortar, which is the environment that they came from, that failed them, is the company that I'm now the CEO of, called Graduation Alliance. Graduation Alliance is based in Salt Lake City. We're fast growing, we're hiring, so we look for people in every aspect of our jobs, from academic coaching to tutoring, all the way through sales and marketing and technology jobs. So if you need anybody in your organization, then, if you're thinking when you graduate that Salt Lake City might be an interesting place, then please feel free to get hold of me, and I will leave you my contact information. Right here. I probably left myself time for one question. It's time to go. All right, thank you very much indeed. I really enjoyed being with you today. Thanks.
Ray, before you come on.